Now, we have a combination here of cod and haddock. And cod was the most popular fish in colonial America, and it was certainly used in a variety of ways. And it saved the settler's life, no question about that. They affectionately called it, get this, Cape Cod turkey. This haddock looks good too. Now, the important thing here is that we don't mush this up, so we're not going to do any stirring. That's sort of an operative word. Then add the half and half. This is going to be good, isn't it? If you're going to eat this, let's not do anything halfway. Oh, that's going to be terrific. And the thyme, and a little bit of salt and pepper to taste. And I don't think you're going to need any salt because it's an ocean fish. Now, keep the burner on to the lowest possible heat because you're going to poach the fish. You will never bring this to a boil. If you do, shame on you. And do this uncovered and simmer this very slowly, that's very low heat, until it's flaky. The fish is flaky, about 15 minutes. We mustn't forget to add the butter at the same time because putting in this butter right here on the top, the fish is done cooking about the time all the butter has melted in. That's sort of just a rule of thumb that cooks know after they've made chowder for a while. Try to keep the fillets intact. They break up very naturally during serving. Then, ladle the soup and into bowls and garnish with chopped parsley and paprika. Pass these reserved salt pork pieces and sprinkle them on the top. These are called gritties, and aren't they good? Great combination with the creamy chowder. Now, let's talk about the next dish. It's polenta, sort of. Cornmeal is one of those ingredients that we associate with both Southern and Yankee food. And now, because of our national melting pot cookery, we discover the Italians like creamy cornmeal dishes too, as they have for centuries, only they call theirs polenta. And the next dish that I'm going to prepare is Yankee, but it could pass as polenta. It's really great with charbroiled sirloin steak. It's called cornmeal pie, and here's the recipe. 2 cups of chicken broth, 1/4 teaspoon salt, 1/4 teaspoon pepper, liberal pinch of nutmeg, 1/2 cup yellow cornmeal, not stone ground, 2 tablespoons of butter, 4 tablespoons grated Parmesan cheese, and for garnish, paprika. And to the saucepan, we're going to add the broth, the salt, the pepper, the nutmeg, and bring that to a really good boil. And then add the cornmeal very slowly. And some people just sort of sprinkle it in and whisk all the time as you do this because it will clump if you don't. There we go. Now, this recipe came to me from my friend Yvonne Diamond, who incidentally is a great cook. And she lives in one of the truly beautiful towns in the United States, Newburyport, Massachusetts. And its streets are lined with venerable sea captains' mansions topped with widows' walks. Now we've got all this integrated, and it's nice and smooth, and it really does set up very quickly. And also I might mention, it's a very noisy dish. That sound that you hear is right, and so is that plopping business that we see going on. Now, cover this over low heat, whisking it now and then for 15 minutes. We have one here that has been cooking for the full 15 minutes, and it's ready for the next step, which is adding the butter. And there it goes. And then whisk or stir that in. We used to make cornmeal mush at the farm and would slice it and fry it then after it had chilled a while. And that was one of our favorite breakfasts. Really, corn is a staple of the world. Now, pour this into a well-greased 9-inch pie plate and smooth it out. Wasn't that quick? Wasn't that easy? And then, after that, put on the Parmesan cheese. And by all means, try to find Parmesan cheese in large chunks and grate your own in the food processor. It has so much more flavor. And if you do it as you need it, you will be spoiled forever. And you won't buy that stuff off of the shelf anymore. And you can find that in delis now everywhere across the United States. Now, sprinkle on the paprika. This is purely for color. It doesn't add any flavor at all. but it really enhances the dish, doesn't it? This is truly elegant mush, wouldn't you say? Now, corn dishes had been sustaining the Indians for centuries before the colonists arrived, and they were making mush when those people first stepped off the boat at Jamestown. And you know what? The Indians even brought popcorn to the first Thanksgiving dinner, a snack which quite astonished the English. We really loved visiting Newburyport, Massachusetts, just because of the architecture, and it is right on the water. It's a marvel to see, and I recommend it highly because there's also really good shops and restaurants. Yvonne, knowing of my affection for old recipes, garnered this one from an old Newburyport cookbook. It was originally made with leftover cornmeal mush, then topped with cheddar from nearby Vermont, but I really prefer this Parmesan. Now cover and chill this mixture for at least 30 minutes or up to 12 hours. The pie can be made in advance and baked just before serving. Bake it at 400 degrees for 25 minutes or till this pie is golden brown. Then cut it into wedges and serve it hot, of course. As I mentioned, it goes very well with grilled steak, and by adding a salad and a touch of fruit, you certainly will have a very good meal. This is a very quickly prepared and appealing carbohydrate dish. It replaces potatoes or rice. It is different, and it goes well with many meats and poultry dishes. If you call it polenta, people will think you're very, very trendy. Our early colonial cooks were very clever in using the indigenous plants to enhance their plain cookery. Scented geraniums were found in many early herb gardens and were used to flavor foods such as angel food cake, punches and drinks, and cream-based puddings. And they also used them to make jelly. Our next recipe, rose geranium jelly, is as appetizing today as it was 200 years ago. Here are the ingredients. 4 cups of bottled apple juice, 1/2 cup fresh lemon juice, 10 cups of sugar, 8 fresh rose geranium leaves, 1/2 teaspoon of butter, 1 package powdered pectin, and a few drops of red food coloring. Now, this is our rose geranium today, and we've got a lot of them in the back. My mother also called these walnut geraniums, and I think they go really by either name. They're very, very fragrant, and I love having them on hand. I use them at home also to garnish through the winter. And it's a pungent geranium. It's very nice to use for this apple jelly, and there are many, many scented geraniums. Now, what you want to do is combine the apple juice and the sugar and the rose geranium leaves in a very deep pot, and that's the operative word, deep pot, because jams and jellies are notorious for boiling over and making the most ghastly mess that you can imagine. Now, you bring this to a full boil over high heat, stirring constantly, and you boil it 1 minute, and you want it to be boiling so vigorously that you can't stir down the bubbles. Then you're going to add the pectin all at once, and it's the pectin that actually thickens the jelly. And you can really count on this working for you. You don't have to cook the jellies down the way our grandmothers used to. See how this is foaming up as you add the pectin? Now be sure to read the instructions that come with the pectin box, because it tells you a lot about the details of jelly and jam making and has really very, very good recipes. And look at this foaming up. Isn't this terrific? Now, you let this boil very hard for an additional minute. And since we don't have that additional minute, I'm just going to set that aside and come over here to this pot, what we have prepared earlier. And the first thing we're going to do here is remove the geranium leaves. They look sort of sick, don't they, at this point? And that's all right. We're not going to put them in the jelly. As I say, you can put them in your compost bed, and that will take care of them very nicely. Rose geraniums actually don't bloom. They might have a little teeny bloom, but it's so indescribably small you don't see it. Then you're going to want to skim off the foam. And those are just a few of the impurities that have come to the top. And that would be the impurities out of the rose geranium leaves. But actually, you can eat that if you want to. It just isn't pretty. Then you're going to tint this a very pale pink with the food coloring. Now, this is optional, but I happen to like it because I think that it enhances the looks of the jelly. Oh, it is so pretty. Now, ladle this hot mixture into hot, sterilized jelly glasses. And, oh, see what a pretty color that is? Oh, I'm delighted with it, delighted with it. And you fill up the jars to 1/4 inch of the top for head space. Now, it used to be that you would pour paraffin, hot paraffin on top of this, and that was considered enough of a sealer. That no longer is considered safe enough, and so you put this in a hot water bath. Now, first of all, I want to wipe off the top just to make sure, because that will ensure a seal. Wipe off the top, and then put on the lid, like this. And these have been sterilized, and they're in hot water. And then you're going to process this in a boiling hot water bath, counting the time after the water comes to a full boil, after the jars are immersed, and you boil them or process them for what is called this processing business for 5 minutes. Then you remove them to a towel-lined rack to catch the drips and let them cool gradually and store in a cool place. This is a very nostalgic yet engaging jelly. Very delicate in flavor, so serve it with plainly flavored baked items, such as biscuits, scones, or white toast. And do make up some extra jars to give as gifts. Well, didn't we accomplish a lot today? Love doing this show. Lobster rolls, a specialty of New England, as well as the Cape Cod fish chowder, hearty and satisfying. The sophisticated but simple cornmeal pie, and finally, rose geranium jelly, as timely today as it was centuries ago. Our antiques are very, very appropriate today, and they're very interesting as well. They're Maine decoys.